Shalom. This week we are in Parashat Behar. It means on the mountain. Now last week I did not record a teaching. I did prepare it, but things didn't work out. So I sent an email with the link to last year's teaching, as well as the notes for those who I've got the email addresses. So I'm not going to do that this week or this coming Saturday. I'm going to do Behar, and the reason for that is because Shavuot is around the corner. The counting of the Omer leading up to day 50, which is one of the times we are going to look at. But what's important is that Shavuot is not only a one-day event. It's basically 4 themes, and the 4 themes are associated with different numbers as you count the Omer. So I've gone through that in detail last year. I'm going to recap that this Saturday. I'm also going to lay some basic foundation of approaching Shavuot and what it's all about. So this week's Torah portion, Behar, can be translated as on the mountain or in the mountain. Now, when we read through Exodus, and that's actually what I want to also go through this week, is the 8 times Moshe went up the mountain. And one of the events is where he went up, where he met the council members, where he had a meeting with 73 elders, 74 men in total. And then Moses was called up into the mountain, which is a higher level of entering in, which I believe is a spiritual level. So Moses went into the mountain, and we see the other side of that is the mountain can be in you, where the mountain represents the temple, the spiritual process of entering. And that spiritual process of entering the tabernacle pattern, for example, can also be overlaid with the human body, where we approach the higher parts of ourselves, which is the holiness, and we allow Yahweh to do work within us so we can connect to Him at the Holy of Holies. But that's for another day's discussion. The main topics of this Torah portion is the sabbatical year and the Jubilee year. Now, these aren't commandments that you can derive through logic, using your moral compass. So we all know, don't steal, no murder, don't commit adultery. So those things make sense because I can see the consequences of not doing that. But these commandments are supernatural inspired commandments that can only come from the Creator, the one who understands the main cycles of the seasons, the agricultural cycles, and He introduced the sabbatical year for the land to rest. So it's a commandment for you to allow the land to obey the commandment to rest, basically. Just like Yahweh rested on the 7th day, the land rests on the 7th year. And this was one of the commandments that Israel broke. And they went into captivity for 70 years as a result of this. And at the end of the 70 years, that was the time when Daniel was a prophet, and that was the revelation of them returning back to the land. And it's all to do with an end time context. Now, if I overlay that with where we are at, if that's the end time context, that was the main commandment that was broken. Is that the same commandment that we are breaking currently? Not obeying Yahweh's cycles of rest, not obeying Yahweh's cycles of His Moedim, not obeying Yahweh's weekly cycles. And we basically are in a state of captivity because of that. And at the end of this captivity, we are going to be set free, and that setting free process is another larger exodus, which is the exodus from Babylon. Now, we're also in a very interesting time historically. We are currently in a Smitha Year. We are currently in the year where the land is supposed to rest. Now this land and this rest has to do with larger cycles, and because we live in a modern society, we see the impact of this on the financial markets. Now, we had a Smitha Year in 2008, 2009, and 7 years later we had another one, and now 7 years after that we're in the next Smitha, which is basically the 7th Smitha. And next year, 2023, will be the year of Jubilee, starting at September, the end of the Smitha, at 2022. Now, this is quite fascinating because there's a narrative that's been played out in our, let's say, political realm, financial realm, that's currently happening. We had a major market crash over the last 2 weeks. And the basic issue is hyperinflation or high inflation in all the countries around the world, all at once. Now, the inflation caused the interest rates to be risen, and then people can't borrow cheap money anymore, and they can't sustain what they're doing, and that in effect burst the bubbles, these financial bubbles that's currently inflated through the money printing that's been happening in every single country. Now, this bubble burst also happened in 2008, 2009 with the housing market, and that caused the GDP, the great, not GDP, the great world collapse in economical collapse in 2008, 2009 because of a bubble that popped as a result of inflating the housing market. Now, this time around, the housing market's inflated as well as the financial system, and all the currencies are inflated. And these things are put under pressure deliberately to make them burst. And this is an initiative by the IMF, International Monetary Fund, where they call this the Great Reset. It's a great reset of the financial systems. It's also a process where the one empire will change hands with the next empire that's going to rise. The existing empire is the empire of the USA, and the new empire that will rise is the one that's the strongest economically, and that's currently China. So we are changing hands, moving from one empire to another, and that's why there's some flavors of looking after the social preferences of people. So it's no longer a democratic system, if you like. They're introducing a new system gradually across the whole world, and that's also in line with the new financial system that is going to be implemented in November 2022. That is part of the ISO 222 system for the new, they call it the quantum financial system, where they build everything on a digital platform. And there's a great rush and a great push internationally to get CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, in place for every single country, so everything can be transparent, and that will equate to the removing of cash, a cashless world where everything is transparent. You know, we read about this in Revelation, where you will no longer be able to buy and sell unless you comply, unless you worship the beast. Now, worship means to comply with and bow down to, or accepting the system that's been given. So we are on the verge of being faced with that system. I'm not saying it's going to happen in September. It's going to be switched on in November 2022, from September to November, and it's going to be a 3-year rollout up to 2025 to get all the banks all across the world on the same system. And they're going to have a great reset of all financial systems to jump onto this new system. So financially, everyone will be challenged. So look after yourself financially. I can't tell you what to invest in. I know gold is going to be a good place to invest, maybe silver. no financial advice, but there is a great reset that's currently happening, and it's going to get worse before it's getting better. And we are going to experience the 7th Shemitah. This is the Shemitah of all Shemitas, and the greatest reset in the world for the new world order, or the new order to come in. And so that's in our timeline, and it's all in Revelation as well. So it's getting very, very close to home, and we need to study Yahweh's word, keep our eye on what's happening around the world, so that we can prepare for what is coming. So I want to leave you with that, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Shalom.